In 3D printing, there's one calibration that we rarely do, despite it being easy and free. Today, I'll show you how to get more dimensionally accurate parts by combating material shrinkage. This doesn't have to be embarrassing, but today we got to talk about shrinkage. 3D printing, of course. Fortunately, it takes little time or effort to tweak our slicer settings and add in permanent compensation, so let's jump in. This video started with me preparing this Prusa enclosure by Voxel 3D Nederland, and as you can see in this image, some of the pieces are quite large. In fact, that piece that forms the roof actually takes up the entirety of the 360mm squared bed. So large that we have a special scaling tool that you're meant to print before doing any of the large pieces. And this, as you guessed it, is to combat shrinkage. As the text says, shrinkage might only be 0.5%, but over a part this big, that's 2mm undersized. In hindsight, this is so obvious, as most people understand that thermal expansion is a thing. As the bed on our printer heats up, it will expand very slightly. And the same goes for our filament, which is heated up to the point of being molten. It's going to expand in size. But quite quickly, in large thanks to the part cooling fan, it's going to cool down, with the rest of the cooling to room temperature happening much more gradually after the print is done. And that means that shrinkage will make our printed objects just that tiniest bit smaller than when they were on the hot bed. So how much shrinkage can we actually expect? Well, here's a PETG test piece from the Prusa enclosure. And if we line up one end flush with a ruler, we can take a measurement for the total length on the other side. And wouldn't you know it, just as the instructions predicted, this part had shrunk to be 2mm undersized. It's meant to be 475 in length, but it's a little under 473. So at this point, I went back and followed the instructions for scaling to compensate, producing a second part that's hopefully more dimensionally accurate. And the maths was sound, with this part hitting 475 almost exactly. When I was back at uni studying industrial design, we were taught that injection molds were made oversized so that the finished part would cool back down to spec. But in my 13 years of 3D printing at home, I've never actually factored this in, and I don't think I'm the only one, so how is this possible? Well, firstly, I think scale is a big factor. On a print that's 20 or 30mm wide, 0.5% is almost immeasurable, and I think a lot of 3D prints commonly are this small, so shrinkage just won't be on the radar. And when we do have a really large 3D print, it's a standalone object, meaning that if it's a tiny bit undersized, you won't even notice. So surely the acid test is when we 3D print parts to interface with real life objects. Well, I don't think this is generally a problem for two reasons. Again, most of these objects are quite small. And even on larger parts, the sections that interface with other hardware are still quite small, like traps for nuts and bolts. And parts that do go over a larger span, quite often attached to forgiving components like 2020 extrusion. If two mounting holes are slightly off in the situation, you won't even notice. And finally, any experienced designer is not going to design things that need to be exactly right in critical dimensions. For instance here, this mounting system is oversized and then clamps down, or this front piece has oversized holes, allowing the part to nestle into the correct position before everything is tightened up. There's just not that many situations where dimensions being very slightly out will be obvious to us. But that doesn't mean we still can't get it spot on. Out of interest, I wanted to start by comparing the shrinkage of various common materials, so I printed the same test another 3 times. We'll revisit PETG, and it's hard to get an exact measurement, but I'm going to call this one right on 473. And once we crunch the numbers, that gives us a shrinkage of 0.42%. As we can see, the PLA strip is slightly over the 473 mark. I'm going to round this one to 473 1/4, which gives us 0.37%. Next is ASA that shrunk a little more, and I'm rounding this one to 472 3/4, which gives a shrinkage of 0.47%. Finally, 95A TPU, which again was a little under 473, so pretty much on par with ASA at 0.47% shrinkage. I also wanted to test nylon, but since the ASA was already warping this much on the unenclosed XL, I thought nylon would probably warp enough to just fall off the bed and fail. Since shrinkage is tied to temperature, another comparison I wanted to try was printing with or without an enclosure. Since I didn't have a printer with a removable enclosure, I went for a P1P versus an X1 carbon. They're not exactly the same, but they should be similar enough that we can spot any obvious differences. Now these printers are much smaller than the XL, so the target length of the strip is only 300mm. In the enclosed X1 carbon, I measured just under 299. So if we round to 298 3/4, we get the same 0.42% shrinkage as we measured for PETG on the XL. The same filament on the open P1P measured just over 299 instead of just under, which when rounded ended up at only 0.25% shrinkage. However, I think these two machines are distinct enough that you can't really draw a strong conclusion here. To me, the enclosure is simply going to prolong the complete cool down of the material. And an enclosure works well because that stability during printing can stop parts from splitting and warping. But eventually, once removed, it will reach the same ambient temperature and shrink down to the same amount. Let me know in the comments if you agree. So we've verified the obvious, that our 3D prints will shrink and be undersized. So here's the easy way to test and compensate for it. So we need a test piece, and if you have an XL, you can come to the linked enclosure, files, and then tools to download the scaling tool. For everyone else, I have some ready to go test strips on printables. Also included there are step-by-step instructions, including how to crunch the maths, and illustrated instructions for how to apply this to the slicer, which we'll cover later in this video. There's 7 different test strip lengths, and the intended printer for each is listed underneath. And if there's nothing there to match the bed of your printer, you can just as easily right-click in your slicer, add a cube primitive, select the scale tool and turn off uniform scale, set the height to 3, the width to 30, and then experiment with the length to see what the longest you can fit across your bed is. You'll need to rotate the strip to make it diagonally go across the bed, as you'll be able to fit a larger strip this way. If you're using one of my strips off printables, you'll need to do the same rotation, typically to 45 degrees, but this might vary depending on the shape of your printer's bed. Now there's plenty of variation in print settings, and I imagine they might have a small effect on shrinkage. So I recommend that you would test per material and set your print settings for what would be typical for how you print. Beyond that, slice and send to the machine, and make sure you don't remove the part until it's completely cooled. We can then lay the test strip on top of a steel ruler and then use something to get the two ends flush. Ensuring the strip is parallel with the ruler, we can then look from above to get our measurement. And you also might find it easier to take a picture of this so you can zoom in and get it accurate. From here, we have some simple maths to do to work out the shrinkage percentage. It's 100 minus the measured length divided by the target length times 100. Let's work through an example with a target length of 300 and a measured length of 299.75. The first thing we do is substitute in these numbers, which becomes 100 minus 298.75 divided by 300 times 100, which simplifies to 100 minus 99.58 to give us a result of 0.42%. Remember that this procedure is on my printables page as well as the next set of instructions. So how do we compensate in the slicer? Firstly, the temporary way, which is to just select a part and then scale it up by that much. So in my case, adding 0.42% before then slicing and sending to the printer. This is what I did for the enclosure parts, but obviously that's going to be easy to forget. We can do something more permanent, but it's a little different in each slicer. In Prusa Slicer, we need to come to the cog next to our material and edit the preset. We'll then change to advanced and look for shrinkage compensation. Hovering over will give us the instructions. For Prusa Slicer, we're entering exactly what we calculated with our formula, 0.42%, or obviously whatever calculated after doing your test. We can then save the filament profile, and this will automatically scale the part up for any future prints with this preset. In Bamboo Studio and Orca Slicer, again, we need to click to edit the material preset, and underneath the main filament tab, look for shrinkage X, Y, and Z. What we enter here is different to Prusa Slicer. We need to enter 100 minus how much we calculated. So for 0.42%, that ends up being 99.58%. Again, we can save a custom profile, and now anything we print should be scaled up to compensate. Finally, in Cura, we can search the settings with the word shrink. Under the materials section, we'll then have a scaling factor shrinkage compensation setting. Now the description here isn't quite as clear, but the way I understand it is that we would add our shrinkage percentage to 100%. So in our case for this example, 100.42%. If we now save this profile, in future, any parts will be automatically scaled up to compensate for shrinkage. Now at this stage, I'm simply matching the shrinkage percentage for Z that I measured for X and Y. I think to be really thorough with this, you would do a tall vertical print and measure it precisely. This is going to take a lot longer, but I can suggest my simple Z banding wobble test tower as it's hollow and uses minimal filament. After such a test, you would crunch the numbers with exactly the same formula, and if needed, enter a different value for the Z-axis shrinkage scaling. For most people, however, I'm sure they'll just use a universal setting. Your last task after all of this, of course, is to reprint the test strip and see if it hits the target length. Here's one final dilemma: should you scale parts that were designed by other people? If they've designed them so the final version fits, will you muck this up by scaling your parts for shrinkage? I would say in the vast majority of cases that you won't. And this updated SV08 part is a good example of this. And that's because pretty much every part designed for 3D printing will have extra clearance and tolerance built in to make sure that they fit. And a tiny fraction of a millimeter change on small distances from shrinkage compensation is not going to disrupt that. Hopefully that's everything that you need to know to make adjustments and get more dimensionally accurate parts. Let me know down in the comment section if you're going to give it a try. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy accurate 3D printing.
G'day, it's Michael again. If you like the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.